Hello, I've got a really fun video for you today. If your idea of fun is nerding out over really good books for kids, stick around. Hi, I am Rachel from 7 and All, and in this video I'm going to be highlighting some picture books on ancient history. My family and I have created an ancient world history and elementary literature-based ancient history that you can use in your homeschool that consists of a parent guide with weekly schedules as well as teaching notes and a student book for application of what the students are learning. So I have that curriculum available on my website. It's completely literature-based, which means that this comes along with a hefty book list of beautiful picture books on ancient history. And the book list, by the way, is included in the free sample. So if you just want great picture book suggestions, just download that free sample. But it was requested that I highlight some of the best books in this course. So I'm gonna do that in this video. So the full history course includes a lot more. I had to narrow these down to some of my top favorites, and I'll just gush over them a little bit and show you the inside so that you know what to expect. First book is actually a series of 3 books. I'm doing the book lover thing and cheating by counting series as just one book. This is the Gilgamesh series by Ludmila Zeman, and this is a picture book retelling of the main narrative of the Epic of Gilgamesh. So I was not introduced to the Epic of Gilgamesh until my high school years when I first read excerpts from it, but this is an ancient story, first recorded in cuneiform on tablets, clay tablets, and we still have some of those clay tablets that scholars have studied and can interpret, but the average student is not going to understand the story at all when they look at those tablets. We don't have the expertise. However, in this picture book format, it becomes actually very simple and straightforward, a story that we can understand and compare to familiar stories and familiar tales that we know. The illustrations are fantastic. And I'll tell you, if you are taking ancient world art at the same time that you are reading these books, which we do suggest and recommend, that's another resource on our website, your child is going to be seeing these illustrations and seeing some of the exact same things that they're learning about in ancient world art in the illustrations. So this is a can't miss series, in my opinion. Next up, we have The Secrets of Tutankhamun, Egypt's Boy King and His Incredible Tomb. There are several, there's actually quite a few books for kids on the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. So if you don't have this specific book and you're using ancient world history, just feel free to replace it with a different one that you do have access to. However, I did choose this one because this is a more in-depth book. It's got quite awesome illustrations here. It is a longer book, and so there's multiple parts to it. It begins with talking about when Tutankhamun's family was alive. So it begins in ancient history, and then it progresses to modern history in the archaeological discoveries and the process and the complications that were all involved and what was involved in that discovery. So you can see there's a lot of nice pictures inside. There is a lot of text. This is a long book, so it's one that we schedule over, I think, 2 weeks, if I remember right. So you're reading it for a while, just portion by portion, but excellent. We really tried to prioritize having wow books in this curriculum, and we rejected a lot of books that were not wow, based on how they were written, the information, the illustrations. This was another book. You've probably heard of it because it's pretty popular, and to us this was a wow for sure. This is The Librarian Who Measured the Earth. Librarian Who Measured the Earth, and it is based on the true story of Eratosthenes, which I'm not a Greek expert. That's not one of my areas of expertise, so I probably mispronounced that. But this is a really fascinating story of this man and his curious mind and what he was able to accomplish in figuring out how to measure the earth with what was available to him back then in ancient history. So a fantastic true story, historical fiction, definitely a must-have for this time period. Now we also included How Maui Slowed the Sun by Peter Gossage right here. Our ancient world history is striving to be an ancient history of the world, the whole global world, and it can be harder to find children's retellings of the myths of areas like Polynesia, New Zealand, and Oceania in general. So this was our pick. If you can't find this specific Maui book, Peter Gossage wrote a number of Maui myths, and you usually can find them on thrift books. You can find them on Amazon, so keep an eye out. I think he even has a few collections available. So this is really well illustrated, a very iconic and a great introduction to an area of mythology that is less familiar to the Western mind. Next up, Escape from Pompeii. Now, the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in Pompeii is iconic historical story that does tend to fascinate many children. There are other Pompeii retellings as well. We chose this one. You can really see a lot in the illustrations about life at this time period. So I definitely recommend taking your time as you go through the illustrations. Look at what people are wearing. Look at the food that they're carrying. Look at the amphora that he's carrying right there, the houses. I think this was quite well researched as far as the illustrations go, and brings to life this very dramatic little portion of history that kids can really be fascinated with, the tragedy of it. Next up, we have Confucius, Great Teacher of China by Demi. I have really appreciated several Demi biographies. They are in depth without being overly long or overly detailed for the attention of elementary age children. There are a lot of illustrations throughout, and you can see like there's a good amount of text, but it's not overwhelming. It's not overwhelmingly difficult or detailed, and you'll really get to know a lot more about the role that Confucius played in ancient China and ancient Chinese thought when you read this. We do include another one of her biographies in this course. We have Alexander the Great as well. Next recommendation is also related to China, and this is also part of a series, On the Run in Ancient China. This is almost like more of a graphic novel style that also has some informational text along the bottom. I personally don't tend to be the biggest fan of the graphic novel style. Myself, it just doesn't click with my brain as much, but I know a lot of kids and a lot of students really love this, including my own sons. And this has a lot of great information, very, very visual. And for me, it was definitely worth including this one. We also have one on ancient Greece that is part of this same series, and there are more books in this series. Another book we included is Charuco, which is a bilingual book. There's Spanish and English text on the page, completely in Spanish and completely in English. And I really wanted to include this book because it's a little bit unusual compared to most of our picture books, which many of them are myths or biographies of people who lived in ancient times. This is actually more like a picture book biography of an archaeologist, because in our course we keep trying to go back to how are we learning all this stuff about the ancient world. Many ancient cultures didn't leave behind written texts, and it's really been through the work of archaeologists who have uncovered pieces and parts of everyday life from ancient times. So this is kind of a rare find. It's an archaeologist, and he's also an archaeologist from Peru. So I loved that it gives us just a little glimpse into his life and to a topic that maybe kids don't study all that much. So you can see what that looks like. We've got nice vivid pictures and text. It is a longer book. Here's the Spanish, here's the English. And you get to see these pictures and what he's discovering. And actually in our course, you'll get to find out what is this thing and where is this thing. So actually in the student pages, that we have here, we'll actually go into what kind of this place that he discovered and this place that he studied and what it is and what people know about it. So we do go into more detail than you get in the book as far as his discoveries. But this is a great introduction to the life of an archaeologist. Then there's these books, which you will see a lot about these books in homeschool recommendations, and that is for good reason. They are very good books. These are, however, denser and longer and more detailed than some of the picture books I've shown you here. So in our course, we recommend them as further reading, where if you have an older elementary student, you might want to include these. I have a second grader. I do still think we're gonna be reading through these because he is the kind of kid who will be very interested in this. But these are the David Macaulay series. This is Pyramid as well as City. City is for the construction of a Roman city, so Roman city planning. And then Pyramid is the construction of a pyramid. And they are completely in black and white. A lot of technical diagrams, a lot about tools and construction and building and kind of the science and engineering that ancient people used to construct these great structures. And it's really, really fascinating. These are denser, longer books, and they are scheduled over a couple of weeks. But a great addition, but definitely more toward the upper elementary side or the more nerdy kid side that is gonna get a kick out of all the engineering. Next up, we have Feathered Serpent and the Five Suns, a Mesoamerican creation myth. And this is a version of the myth of Kukulkan. I believe he was called in this one. So we have a lot of illustrations. This is not very long as far as wordiness. But your kids will be introduced to a creation myth from the Mesoamerican cultures, the Maya and Aztec, Olmec cultures, some blending of their myths right here. And while this myth itself might be more unfamiliar to your kids, hopefully you will be able to see connections between this myth and other epic tales and myths that they have already read, such as the myth of Gilgamesh and such as some of the Greek myths as well, because this myth follows the structure of an epic quest. And I talk about that in the curriculum, so don't worry if you're doing the curriculum, you don't have to think of those connections necessarily off the top of your head when you're sleep deprived and busy with all your kids. You can just follow the curriculum if you want those connections. And next up, I'm going to show you my last favorite, which I'm going to preface with an acknowledgement that this book will not be everybody's cup of tea. I think some people will love it and some people will say, yeah, I'm gonna skip that one. This is scheduled as an optional further reading book if you wanna go deeper, and it does have some content warnings because the content is a little bit heavier or scarier or would freak some kids out, and that is Ramayana Divine Loophole by Sanjay Patel. And this is a picture book retelling of the Ramayana. It is very long, so this is an important myth, legend within the tradition of Hinduism, and this is coming out of ancient India. I said that in this curriculum I wanted to include wow books, and when I looked at this book and started reading this book, to me, this was a wow book. Between the illustrations and between the actual writing is incredibly interesting and vivid. It is very vividly written. It's the kind that does make you want to keep reading. It's not boring, tedious at all. However, this is Hindu mythology, and Hindu mythology is fairly unfamiliar to a lot of us from the West, and some of this is rather alarming. The first page begins with a 10-headed guy cutting off his heads one by one in order to try to get the attention of the gods, basically, is how I would sum that up. So use that content warning as a kind of idea of the type of alarming content that you might find in this. This is not necessarily a story of happy, good people just doing happy, good, peaceful things. No, like, I'm not trying to do any false advertising here. However, this is very well written, very well illustrated, and a very interesting and insightful look into Hindu mythology and kind of the ancient worldview of the people of India. Not comprehensive, but through the glimpse of learning one myth. And that is really why we study mythology overall. We're studying mythology to understand people and how they think and how they explain the world around them and how they view good and evil. And different cultures have had very different ideas and very different worldviews on that. So studying mythology can be one way to help understand the people around us and to understand how people have historically explained the world that we live in. All right, I hope that you appreciated this glimpse inside some of my favorite books on ancient world history, whether you are using our course or whether you just want some great picture books to help your kids dive into ancient world history. I hope you guys have a lot of fun with this. Now, in the comments down below, tell me what are some of your top favorite ancient history books that I need to know about. See you later. Bye.